My name is Jen. Thank you all for joining me today. This is my first summer as a ranger here, but it's not my first summer in Alaska. I first came up here back in 1998 for what I thought was going to be one summer. Be warned, all of you, I fell head over heels in love with Alaska. Here I am for my 7th summer back in this state, my first summer with the Park Service. So I'm excited to be here and excited to share this place with all of you. As we're walking today, we're going to be exploring a theme that I want you all to ponder. And it's the idea that we are all out here today to connect or to reconnect with this particular landscape. I came up with this theme after reading a study that really got me thinking. In 2006, there were 2 conservation biologists that completed a study of human beings. Now that's unusual because conservation biologists normally would study wildlife, right? And they look at ways to preserve and protect our wildlife. So why were they studying people? Well, what they realized is that people are the ones responsible for preserving and protecting our wildlife. So we need to understand human beings here in America to understand how we can protect those wild things. How many people came here to see wildlife in Denali? Yeah. The idea is that we as humans will fight to protect only what we love. And we love only what we know firsthand. So these conservation biologists realized that since the mid-1980s, the American people have been declining in their participation in outdoor activities. By 1% every year, we've been participating less and less. What's going on? They looked at a bunch of variables to try and understand, why are we no longer going outside? What do you think?
Technology.
Technology, indeed. Anybody else have any specific thoughts on technology or what's keeping us indoors?
Crime. Outside.
Crime, concerns, or safety? What's that?
The internet.
The internet, that was one of the big ones. The internet, any sort of technology, video games, movies. Not only concern for safety with our youth growing up, not letting them go outside, but also rising gas costs. All of these things are influencing our choices. So that whereas in the mid-1950s, probably when a lot of you got to go out, how many people remember going camping with their parents? That was the most popular form of American recreation back in the 50s. Nowadays, movies, internet, TV did not influence our choice. Pretty shocking, but we had TV even back in the 50s, and we were still choosing to go outside rather than watch TV. So today we're going to be exploring and sort of reconnecting. Here we are, Americans. You guys are unique. You're special. You're still choosing to go outdoors. So think about how you can share this experience with those who aren't here with us today. As we begin walking, feel free to stop and ask questions about anything you see. And I want you to ponder your parents and your grandparents and what they would have been doing at this time of year. So think about that as we walk. And this is one of the best parts of being out on the trails. There's a bunch back there. Who still needs blueberries? So, raise your hand if you have some memories of your grandparents or your parents and what they would have been doing at this time of year. End of summer, early fall. Anybody grow up on a farm? Anybody still live on a farm? How many people in the fall like to do some canning or freezing, preserving of foods? That's what our wildlife is busy doing right now too. They're stockpiling and getting ready for winter. Everybody has a different strategy for surviving a long, cold winter here. And right in this area is a very visible strategy. Does anybody see signs of animal activity? Yes. This whole area is covered with some whole and some chewed up spruce cones here. Any guesses on what animal might have done this? Yes. Red squirrels. Everyone's familiar with the squirrels, and we just passed a live one, but I don't know if they're going to hang out here with us. So I brought along a red squirrel. This is our super squirrel. It actually flies. It's already in its Superman position. But this is a red squirrel. This is what's doing all of this activity, just like the farmers back in the day. Yeah, perfect. It's coming in to see its distant relative. These squirrels are busy stockpiling, and you can see a bunch of fresh spruce cones that they've cut from the tops of the trees and dropped down. They are stashing cones all throughout this area that's called a midden, and they'll be peeling off the outer layers of the cones and eating the seeds all winter. I'm going to pass the squirrel around for anyone who's curious. It's one of the few times you can actually pet our wildlife. So. The other delicacy that squirrels like to gather, ooh, this guy might be a little upset. Yeah. We might be in its space. The other delicacy that they like to gather is fungus. Now this is a special treat for almost all of our wildlife. And if they find fungus, yeah, this might be this squirrel's home. Either that, or it's taking advantage of another very industrious squirrel that's already cut a bunch of cones. If they find fungus, they're not going to stuff them underground because it would actually rot from the moisture down there. So they'll put them up in the branches of the trees. That way, if they get wet, they dry out again, and they also keep their stash safe from everybody else who would love to have some of our delicious mushrooms. How many have heard it's been a very rainy summer up here? It's a fantastic summer for our fungi. They are loving the rain. So you'll see a lot of samples of mushrooms, and I'm going to apologize now that I only know a few of them. So you can ask me, but there's only a few that I know. Does anyone see a squirrel nest around here? Yes. That little cluster of branches and sticks and twigs and needles up there, that's the squirrel bed. That's where they'll be hanging out all winter long. It's a very weatherproof home. It's tightly built so the squirrel can tuck in there. During storms, it can hang out for a couple of days. Remember, our squirrels are not hibernating. They're staying awake through the winter, and they're feeding off of this stockpile of food. They also will often build nests a little bit higher up. It's kind of like the day bed where they can relax, soak up the sun, enjoy the breeze on sunny days. So you'll sometimes see those less tightly built nests higher up. So squirrels remind us of our roots as farmers, stockpiling our food and getting ready for long winters. We're going to continue traveling back in our own history. So think a little bit further back in history. Has anyone been to this park before? Look for signs of people who've been here before you. We'll stop in just a minute. If you had visited this park any time before 2005, you might be a little bit confused by our new visitor center and everything like that, because you would remember this road into the park. Does anyone know what's right down that way? Anybody take the train here? Our train station is right down there. If you pass around this photo, this is our old entrance station, kind of the classic archway to the park that would have been right over the road here. So this was the main way that people would drive in. Back until 2005, we did some major restructuring and rerouting. As you walk through this area, really keep your eye, you can pass it around. Really keep your eyes open for signs of human activity, because historically, we have been in this area for a long time. Does anyone see any signs of human disturbance? Any clues that people have been here?
There's a car.
What do you, the car? Yeah, car is a good one. This open, cleared area, yeah, this is a huge clue. The forest is actually a clue as well. All of these young poplar and aspen trees are the first trees to regrow in an area that's been cleared or disturbed. So when you see these guys, you know, wait a second, something happened to that forest. It's young forest regrowing. Our spruce trees will grow up later on, and they'll shade out our poplars and aspens. That's old forest. When you see spruce, it's been that way for a while. So you're looking around a relatively young forest. And here you have another big clue as to what might have gone on in this area, right? You are actually standing at the site of Maurice Marino's second homestead and hotel villa here. Is anyone here a real estate agent? Is anyone here Italian? Well, Maurice Marino was a famous local Italian. I like to think of him as sort of our original Donald Trump here in the park. He was a very savvy real estate agent, and he claimed a lot of the land in the area that we're going to be walking through. He very wisely built his first homestead and hotel down the hill a little bit. This was the second one, an even smarter choice because our train track is just down below there. Our first park visitors got here by train. We didn't have the road for a long time. When they got off the train, they came right up the hill to Maurice's fabulous Italian villa, built with big porches and verandas. And this whole area used to be clear, no trees, remember? So he had fantastic views of all the mountains off in the distance. Now, the Park Service would have loved to have headquarters right around this area, but Maurice got it first. Our first superintendent's office will pass a little bit later on. It was in a very cold location down at the bottom of the river canyons here. Maurice was smart in that he would let people build on his land. They could build little cabins if they were part of the railroad or the road crews or anybody who was living and working out here. But the condition was when they left, Maurice owned that cabin and he could rent it out to anyone else who needed it. If you think about this area back in the early 1900s, Maurice was here with his hotels and villas. We had Duke and Elizabeth Stubbs running a silver fox farm down the hill. We had lots of gold miners, hunters, and trappers. Everyone was surviving off the land. A very different connection to the land. We weren't farming and growing vegetables and storing them here. We were going out and hunting. We were trapping. We were trying to tame just a little bit of the wilderness in order to survive. Then along came the Park Service. What a crazy idea. We're going to preserve and protect this land for future generations. Way ahead of its time, right? People were still out there trying to live off of this land, and now we're saying, you've got to stop market hunting. We can't have all the sheep killed to feed everybody here. So our poor superintendent had a very difficult first job trying to shift the whole mindset of the population that lived here. Very different. So again, how many people came here because they wanted to see wildlife? I'm going to give you another opportunity to pet wildlife. When I think about our hunters and trappers and how well they knew our animals, how connected we were, I think that's why we all still have that strong desire to be close to the animals. That's our history. We were connected. We ate every part of these animals. We slept on their hides. We wore them as clothing. We as human beings are only a short bit removed from that history. Each hide bag is labeled. You can reach in and feel. We've got bear, we've got moose, sheep, caribou was very popular, and when you feel it, you'll know why. We loved caribou hides on our beds, caribou mucklucks on our feet. Doll sheep, I wish we could figure out how to make this a good hide. Think about the doll sheep. How many people saw them way up on the hillsides, on the mountains? They're still up there in winter. These guys are so well adapted to deal with the cold thanks to their fur. But doll sheep in particular is one that we never figured out how to use that well, how to tan it and keep the fur to stay in.
Yeah, because it comes out.
If anyone wants to see Maurice Marino with some of the animals that he got, yeah, you should feel the caribou. This is our softest one here. Anybody need to feel moose?
How did the people adjust to, if they couldn't hunt as much anymore, how did they adjust to that?
That's a great question. How did people adjust when they couldn't hunt as much anymore? What did we do? Well, Duke and Elizabeth Stubbs, who ran the fox farm down the hill, they raised silver fox. That was their income. When the Park Service expanded its boundary in 1932 to include this area, the Stubbs sued the Park Service for loss of income, and they actually won that case. In 1937, they were awarded $50,000. So a lot of people had to have a drastic shift in their lifestyle. So you can imagine the early days of this park, it was a little bit tumultuous. A lot of people thinking, this is fantastic and brilliant of Charles Sheldon. And then a lot of people really struggling to shift over to what's next? Where does our food come from? And things like that. They had to start shipping from other areas or hunting just outside the park. So. The park here still allows for subsistence hunting. We recognize that people have long made their living in their history. So if you have a tradition of surviving off of hunting, you can still get subsistence permits to hunt in the preserve areas of this park. Very different. This park did a lot to recognize that people needed this land to survive off of. So. Everybody got to see Maurice. All right. We're going to walk for a minute and travel just a little bit further back in our past. So think about our history before we were hunters, trappers, miners. What were we doing to survive here?
Caves. Cave dwellers.
Good guess. Yeah, we'll talk about it in just a minute. So, cave dwellers, maybe even a little bit different up here. We didn't have a lot of caves, but we were living simply off the land. Follow me. How many people find themselves wanting to know the flowers here? Photograph the flowers, learn their names. Yes. If you think about it, that's another huge part of our human history. Before we were hunters, miners, trappers connected to this land, there were Athabascan folks living here 7,000, 12,000 years ago. They were gathering a lot of berries. Any kid was going to grow up learning every single plant in this area, what it could be used for. This forest is kind of the original Walmart, right? You've got your pharmacy, you've got your grocery store, you've got all your home building materials. Everything you need was to be found in this forest. So we're going to spend a little time indulging that connection to the plants now. I'm going to pass out cards. Each one has a different picture on the front and then some names and information on the back. If you find your plant or you just find a plant that you're curious about, give a holler, stop the group, and we'll talk about some of the incredible plants that we're passing along the way here. Of course, there are lots of berries to be recognized. You can hold on to that one. That one is yours. I'll give you guys one more. So does anyone see their plant right here before I start us? Now you're not allowed to trade plants. You got to hold on. Sometimes we have to share. It's a team effort here. What do we have? So we found our first plant. If everyone wants to come down this way. Gather in just a little bit. This one's a tiny one to see, and we'll see it a lot more. But it's this little tiny one. Can you tell us about your plant?
Labrador tea. Very aromatic, evergreen shrub, 1 to 2 feet tall, leathery leaves, dark green, and densely rusty woolly underneath. White flowers, 5 petals, clustered on top.
So we're past the flower stage at this point. It's just this little green plant right here. Can we use it for anything?
Evergreen leaves are used to make a spicy aromatic tea, used during the Revolutionary War as a substitute for tea previously supplied by the Empire. Take care not to boil leaves, may release lidol, a toxin that can cause cramps and paralysis.
So a tea to prepare with knowledge, right?
Very high in vitamin C, second only to rose hips. Alternate host of spruce rust along with crowberry. 2
good clues to our future, and we have someone searching for rose hips. So we've got a higher vitamin C content, but maybe a little bit higher risk in drinking this tea, right? We want to be careful not to release those toxins. If anyone wants to smell this plant, give it what I call a plant handshake. Rub your fingers on these little leaves And then smell your fingers and you can smell that nice spicy smell. I'll take your card. Thank you. Nice eyes. So what is it?
Are we right?
Soapberry?
Oh, soapberry. Such a good one. Yes.
All right. This is a shrub 3 to 5 feet high, young twigs and buds covered with reddish brown scales, leaves up to 2.5 inches long.
Can we eat them? That's the big question with all the berries, right?
Very bitter due to saponin, once used to make a dessert topping by adding sugar to whipped froth.
The original Cool Whip was made with these. So, now, is anyone here a really big fan of the grizzly bears? You really want to see the bears, or maybe you're excited to see them. If you want to commune with the bears, to understand what they're going through right now, you can pick one of these berries. Now just remember its name is what? Soapberry. So think about that name and think about how much you like those bears. But if you're curious, this is what the bears are eating. Upwards of 20,000 calories a day right now. They love these berries. You will find lots of them along the way. Make sure you've got a sip of water or strong taste buds to survive this. I will eat one first so that everyone knows they are edible. You can watch my face.
I want to try it.
So this moss was used for toilet paper and diapers. Makes sense. Super absorbent moss. Yeah, someone just discovered soapberry flavor. Very absorbent moss. We also used it for wound dressings, right?
Yes, it's an antibacterial plant, absorbs moisture better than a sponge. It's used for wound dressings or a pad splint for broken bones.
That's phenomenal to think about. A lot of our plants here in the forest are antiseptic or antibacterial. So yes, all of your medicine and wound care right here. Somebody else was looking for dwarf dogwood. Who's from the East Coast here? How many people recognize the beautiful dogwood trees, nice and tall, white flowers? I want you to look down at your feet right now. We have some full-size dogwoods. They are adults. You'll recognize the leaves. So you found the dogwood. What can we do with dogwoods? Anything?
It says the juicy red berries are edible but full of crunchy poppy-like seeds. Can be cooked, strained, and added to more flavorful fruits.
So you can eat them. Usually you want to cook them first and add them to more flavorful foods. But you guys have some of those nice red berries down by your toes. Over in this section we've just got some leaves here. But indeed, that's as big as the dogwood's going to get. That's not a baby, that's an adult. That's our dwarf dogwood here.
Okay, prickly.
Is it what?
Is this the cranberry back here?
That's high bush or low bush cranberry.
Yeah, that's
Yep.
what we had.
Oh, my goodness. Well, we're going to cover all of our plants right now. Low bush cranberry, what can you tell us about our cranberries?
It's late ripening, available in quantities in the fall, best picked after the first frost. Berries persist throughout the winter. High acid content, best cooked as a sauce or in combination with rose hip pulp
Yes.
and sugar to make jam.
So these are another edible berry. They're that beautiful dark red, very low berry. You can see them all behind you and on this side of the trail. You want to wait until after the first frost to pick these guys if you want them to be nice and sweet. Well timed for Thanksgiving dinner, right? After the first frost, gather your cranberries, make a fantastic sauce. Thank you, good eyes.
Best for Baskin-Robbins ice cream.
Yes, I thought that was on the card.
I had seen the flower, I mean, you know,
Oh.
back where we live, but
Yeah.
I had never seen
The berries.
So that's neat. Yeah.
You can feel free to sample. We haven't had a really good frost yet, so they may not be super sweet, but look for those dark, dark red ones. Make sure you don't get a soapberry by accident. That's a high bush cranberry, so a little bit different. Yes, let's find one with rose hips on it. We should be able to find some hips. Anything you can tell us about our rose hips? These started off as a gorgeous pink flower in early June, and now they've gone on to their fruit stage. Can we eat these? I should tell you down at the bottom.
Rose hips and haws are an excellent source of vitamin C. collect in fall after the first frost when they're still firm but ripe and red.
So yes, excellent vitamin C. Everyone's probably catching on, oh, it was pretty easy to get your vitamin C up here so long as you were smart about gathering your berries in the fall. We had a lot of high vitamin C sources. Rose hips can be dried and used in tea. They can be turned into jams, jellies. They can be mixed with the cranberries like you just talked about. Lots of things to do with rose hips. So, excellent. I think this group is going to survive well. You are all well connected to your plants here. How do the bears eat these delicate little berries is the question. They're actually using just their mouths. Their lips are far more fragile and delicate than you might imagine. So they're actually stripping off the berries. They're probably getting leaves in there as well. If you examine a bear scat at this time of year, it is deep red, dark purple, chock full of partially digested berries. Remember, 20,000 calories a day. They're eating a lot of berries, and a lot of these are mainly moving through them. So, but yeah, they're just using their mouths. They're not picking with their claws or paws or anything like that. It's just teeth and lips. Excellent. The yarrow.
Important native medicinal plant. Dry leaves and pound to a powder for sores, cuts, burns, blisters, to kill germs that cause infections.
So another greatly antiseptic plant is this beautiful little white flower. A lot of people can see it down here on this side of the trail too. Good eyes. I'll take your card. Thank you. So we're going to start wrapping it up with our flowers. I think we have just a few more to find. Don't worry, we're not cutting you off. You get to find it still. But I want people to start looking at other things too. The next thing I want you to notice is if you look down this hill at the very bottom, you found yours. Great.
That's it, larkspur.
Can we eat it?
You could, but it wouldn't, you might not survive if you did. However, if you have pesky neighbors, take some home.
Is it poisonous?
Poisonous. Natives use as a wash for lice and fleas. Stems 2 to 6 feet smooth, stout, covered with a white bloom. Leaf blades up to 10 inches diameter. Stony mountain slopes, screes, and tundra. Moist, grassy settings.
Beautiful. Thank you. You found the only specimen out here, so it's a good thing you froze us. So indeed, these purple plants, highly toxic. Most of our purple flowers are inedible as a rule. There's only one that you can munch on that's debatably blue or purple. We may or may not still find it. But don't confuse it with this one here. Deadly toxic. Natives also used it on their arrow tips for hunting to help put the animals down. But if you look down this hill, what else do you notice? Down at the bottom of the flowers, laying deep in the forest.
Muskeg?
What is it?
Is it muskeg? Or?
It is. Yep, we've got some of that nice spongy forest floor. Anybody see rusty cans? Yeah, trash. Remember, we're still walking through that area where all the cabins were, where lots of people were living. Where did their trash go? Out the back door, right? Where else was it going to go? So we've got these historical can piles. If you find any of this, please don't pick it up. It's expensive for us to store it in climate-controlled rooms. It's all been documented. Leave it where it is. We know it's there. So enjoy it here, but don't pick it up and give it to any rangers ever. Okay. So we're going to continue traveling back in time now. We're going to leave our plant-searching selves. What is the oldest thing around you right here?
Trees.
Even older than trees.
The rocks.
The rocks, indeed. And we are looking at a particularly fascinating specimen right up behind these gold trees. You can see that black rock with some white bands in it. That is 400 million year old rock. That used to be ocean floor sediment. And now here it is, turned to schist and tilted up on its side. This area is incredibly geologically active. So we're going to move backwards in time to the time of the rocks and the glaciers. So keep your eyes on the rocks as we keep walking, because we've got lots of fascinating specimens as we go around this bend. So one of our hikers noticed this is a very big rock, right? It's pretty unique in this area. How do you think this very big rock got to be right here? Any guesses? Glaciers, exactly. Here's the crazy thing about this particular rock. It was carried by a glacier from Nenana Mountain, 40 miles away from here. It traveled in glacial ice as the glaciers advanced, and then during glacial recession, when the ice was melting back, this rock dropped out and stayed right here. It's probably not going anywhere for a long time, right? Couple of other fascinating things about this particular area. If you look behind me, you can see this huge gold band of rock here. That is also very old rock, 60 to 80 million years old. And the crazy thing about that rock is that it's actually a very thin chunk that was just squeezed up between this creek, which is Hines Creek. This creek flows on top of a very active fault. Just on the other side of this chunk of rock is Riley Creek, also a very active fault. And in the movement of those faults, they have squeezed up this chunk, 60 to 80 million year old rock. It's called a horst, like horse with a T on the end. And in just a minute, you'll get to see just how narrow it is. But keep in mind that geology and tectonic activity is a huge shaper of our history here in Alaska, and still is. We have tons of earthquakes in this state, very large magnitude, that are constantly moving and shaping things. How many people came here to see glaciers in Alaska? Why'd you want to see glaciers? What is it about them?
Awesome.
They're old. They're awesome. They're awesome. They're huge in magnitude and scale.
Just for the sheer beauty.
The sheer beauty of them, yes. Glaciers strike us. They affect us in a lot of ways. We as humans in this particular area chose not to live on the glaciers. That would have been a very harsh place to try and carve out a living. So we weren't living on the glaciers. We were down in the valley floors. The Athabascans were traveling and migrating with animals that they were hunting, staying close to rivers where they could gather fish. As glaciers receded, life probably got a little bit easier for them, right? More area that they could actually live in. Looking forward, what's going to happen for us as our glaciers seem to be receding? Will life get easier? Will it get harder? How do we feel about that change? Think about that as you walk. Glaciers affect us in lots of ways. So we've been traveling back in time further and further. We've gone all the way back to 400 million years ago, which is a little bit exhausting. So you guys have done a fantastic job, and now I want to start moving forward again. I want you to just think back as far as your own childhood. For some of you, you don't have to think far at all. If you need advice, look at our resident group member who can offer you advice. When you were sent outside to play as a kid, how did you connect with this land? When you were a kid, you didn't walk nicely on the trails and take photographs. What did you do? You probably threw mud, threw rocks in the river, got barefoot, laid down in the sunshine, explored through the trees. So I'm going to give you that freedom again. From a ranger, please go, take about 5 minutes and connect with that child again. Feel free to throw rocks. Feel free to search for magic rocks. Just remember you have to make wishes on them and leave them here. Feel free to walk on the bridge, wander through the forest, and I'll call you all back in just a couple of minutes. But enjoy. Take pictures. As you're ready, we'll walk off the bridge and continue on. Throw one final rock if you need to. Dunk your hands in the water if you haven't felt it yet. These train tracks look very much the way they did in the early days of this park. If you look at our first superintendent's photos, very similar view that he had. And as we continue walking, we're going to start to pick up the pace a little bit and start to move forward in time even more. So as you're walking, look for more of those signs of our human impact on this place. Whether it's some of those original settlers, you might see clues of the fox farm. You might see influence of the river, old river channels, old beds, or even old glacial berms. So look for all of that and look for more modern influence and think about how you feel about how humans are shaping the land. How are we doing? So walk and chat and look and enjoy. Take a moment to feel the incredible softness of the forest floor. I don't recommend napping. And walking is actually exhausting with that sponginess. It takes a lot of energy. But it is really fun to stick your hand in there and realize just how thick, how many years of vegetation have just built up under those plants. So as we continue walking, I want you to think back to the beginning of this hike and to those conservation biologists that were studying people. Think about someone in your own life that you wish could be here with you right now, that could be sharing this experience. Someone that would really benefit from being outside and walking, connecting with this land. So think about that person. You've got it already?
Yeah, obviously our grandchildren.
Your grandchildren. Grandchildren for you as well?
If they would just appreciate it.
If they could appreciate it.
They're 20, so.
So that is the challenge. I had one woman who finished up a hike with me and she said, you know what? As much as I don't want to be the one to take my granddaughter out in the woods because it's going to be really hard for me, she's never been outside, she said, I recognize now that's my job. That's what I need to do, is to expose her because no one else is going to. So think about, who is that person that you can bring out here? Hold them with you as you walk this next little part. Does anyone have any thoughts to share with the group on how can you take this place, this forest, back home and share it with those folks that need this experience? How so?
Pictures.
Pictures, yeah. Show them pictures. What else?
Write emails about our trail.
Write them emails. Describe this experience. What else?
Just verbal communication, just describing it.
Yeah, just tell them the stories. Tell them how it made you feel.
Try to duplicate it, not in here, but somewhere closer to home.
Yeah.
Take our friends' children or our children, grandchildren to some forest preserve or something.
Exactly. Work them up to Denali National Park, right? Start with your backyard, local county park, whatever it is. Share that with them. Get them to discover that spark or that passion. And then slowly over the years, continue to share that. And that's going to make all the difference. I have one final quote before we leave this trail and sort of head back to the hustle and bustle of the front country. This is from Adolph Murie. Anybody heard of him in your travels through Denali? Incredible naturalist. He was someone who understood connecting to this land. He really spent his days out here knowing what it was about. And this is what he had to say. The national park idea represents a far-reaching cultural achievement. For here, we raise our thoughts above the average and enter a sphere in which the intangible values of the human heart and spirit take precedent. Freedom prevails. The foxes are free to dig burrows where they will, to hunt ptarmigan, ground squirrels, and mice as the spirit moves them. The grizzlies wander over their ancestral home unbothered. They dig roots and ground squirrels graze grass and harvest berries, according to whatever menu appeals to them. The bad wolf seeks an honest living as of yore. He's a respected citizen, morally on par with everyone else. Our task is to perpetuate this freedom and purity of nature, this ebb and flow of life. So thank you all for taking that step today and joining us, walking through and exploring this forest. I applaud you for your connection to this land. Encourage you to go home and share that passion. Thank you.
Thank you.